My name is Lena Carter, and last night the past I buried 2 decades ago knocked on my door. It was raining Seattle. Rain cold and quiet, the kind that makes the skyline blur into watercolor. I stood in my kitchen stirring chamomile tea, listening to the kettle settle into silence, when 3 soft knocks found the wood. I almost let them fade into the weather. But something about the hush on the other side pulled me forward. When I opened the door there, she was my mother, Martha Hayes, smiling as if she hadn't disappeared into a different life 20 years ago. Beside her stood a tall, fair-haired young man, thumbs flying across a phone screen. "Theo," she said brightly. "Your brother." The word felt foreign, like a language I used to know and no longer trusted. Martha adjusted her beige coat, rain glittering along its sleeve, and stepped inside without waiting. "You've done well for yourself," she said, gaze moving over the high windows, the books, the neatness that I earned. "I'm so proud of you." But pride wasn't what lived in her eyes. It was calculation. She talked about family, and helping each other, and the way life circles back to the people who matter. Her perfume, sweet, expensive, sharp at the edges, filled the room as if it owned the air. That was the moment I understood this wasn't a reunion. It was a transaction waiting to happen. And when she smiled again, I realized family can show up not to love you, but to take what's left of your peace. People often remember childhood as soft. Mine was the scratch of old pages and the bitter smell of coffee in my father's used bookstore in a small Ohio town. After my mother left, silence became our third family member. My dad, George Carter, tried to drown it with radio static and kindness, but the quiet always won, seeping into the corners like a stubborn draft. I learned the shop's creaks the way other kids memorized playground games. I knew where the floorboard split, where the cash drawer stuck, which lamp hummed a little before it decided to glow. Customers came for rare copies and conversation, and I learned early how to smile just enough, how to pour coffee without spilling, how to ignore the stack of unpaid invoices that my father pretended I couldn't see. He never spoke ill of her. He never said the word abandoned. He would look at the empty chair by the front window, the one with the fading cushion she used to sit on, and I could tell he was measuring absence the way a carpenter measures a gap he can't quite close. By 10, I understood the currency of quiet children. Quiet meant you weren't trouble, and being not trouble was its own kind of love. So I became capable. I vacuumed rugs after closing taped book spines, learned the smell of mildew and the alchemy of lemon oil. When the heat clicked on during winter but never seemed to reach the corners, I huddled near the register with my homework and told myself the future could be warmer if I could just solve enough problems. School gave me the clean logic I craved. Numbers were honest. Letters knotted into patterns I could untangle. I solved equations, built tiny scripts on the ancient computer in the stockroom, watched how chaos could be coaxed into order if you asked it the right questions. Once around midnight, my father found me asleep over a geometry book pencil, still in hand. He brushed hair from my forehead. "You don't have to save us, kiddo," he whispered. I kept my eyes closed because I didn't want him to see that I already believed I did. We counted time and survived months. We replaced broken bulbs with softer ones because softer was cheaper. We kept the door unlocked even on thin days because hope needed an entrance. By 17, I had a plan that felt like oxygen leave study become someone whose life didn't live at the mercy of overdue stamps. When the scholarship offer came from a university in Washington state, the envelope shook in my hands. On the bus west, I looked back through the window and saw my father standing in the shop's doorway waving with his whole self. The distance stretched, and the guilt traveled with me. I promised the weathered building and the man inside it that I'd make every mile worth it. I didn't know then that success would be the very light that drew a different kind of moth back to my life. Seattle became a restart I could touch. Gray skies, bright minds, caffeine like rocket fuel. I arrived with one suitcase, a laptop that overheated when I asked too much of it, and a hunger that didn't look like ambition from the outside, but was. College was brutal in a precise way. Scholarship covered tuition, not living. I waited tables, graded freshman labs, and coded until my knuckles ached. I learned the city by the feel of its sidewalks at 2 a.m. By the way steam rose from manholes when it rained, by which coffee shops let you sit until they stacked chairs on tables. I wasn't romantic about it. Exhaustion was a toll booth you paid to cross the bridge into another version of yourself. After graduation, Neural Sight, a small AI startup with more ideas than furniture, took a chance on me as a junior data analyst. The office had no windows and too much hum from servers that needed coaxing. But the problems were real and stubborn, and I was good at stubborn. I saw patterns and noise stories inside numbers, the quiet truth hiding inside messy inputs. Promotions came like the careful rungs of a ladder you test before you climb. Meetings turned into decisions. Decisions turned into responsibility. And responsibility finally translated into a salary that didn't scare me when I opened my banking app. When the first big paycheck cleared, I called my father from the sidewalk outside a Thai place. "Guess who's buying dinner this time?" I said. He laughed, and I heard something unbuckle inside that sound. I started sending money every month, enough to fix the leaky roof, to replace the heater that rattled winters into longer winters, to keep the door painted the same hopeful blue. My circle was small and carefully chosen. Evelyn from work, sharp, loyal, a mind like a scalpel. Ryan from the downstairs coffee shop, curious, easy to talk to, a detective who liked discussing algorithmic bias like it was philosophy. For the first time, life didn't feel like a test I could fail at any moment. It felt earned. Then an email arrived with a subject line that hummed like static. "Family needs you, Lena." No name, no context, just the echo of a request from a mouth that hadn't said my name in 20 years. I deleted it. It reappeared in my head when the apartment went quiet. I told myself it was spam. And yet I started checking the peephole before opening the door. Until the knock came. Martha stood in my doorway wearing the same kind of poise she wore the night she left. "Lena, my darling," she breathed, and the endearment fell like a coin into a jar I had long ago smashed. She leaned in for a hug before I chose whether my body remembered her. Her perfume drew circles through the air, sweet at first, then cutting. Theo slouched behind her eyes, glued to his phone. "Nice place," he muttered without looking up. They crossed the threshold as if the act of knocking had been courtesy rather than question. They chose the couch. I stayed standing, one hand on the doorframe to keep from floating away. Martha's gaze moved through my apartment, a catalog scan, not a mother's look. "You've built quite a life," she said. "I always knew you'd make it." The line sounded practiced, the way you rehearse a phrase on a long flight. I asked how she'd found me. "Oh, you know," she said, breezy. "The internet connects everyone." Then her voice shifted a register from reminiscing to business. "Theo's been accepted to a wonderful school. We're so proud. Tuition is steep. Your stepfather's had a difficult year and, well, family takes care of family. You could help. Just a few thousand a month." The room tilted. "You came here for money?" I asked. She winced as if the word itself were cruel. "Don't make it sound ugly," she said softly. "This is about love, Lena. About opportunity." Theo glanced up long enough to add, "You can afford it. This place screams money." Inside my chest, something old and badly healed shifted. I kept my voice even. "I'll think about it," I said, because I needed time to remember how to breathe. Martha reached for my hand. "Don't wait too long," she murmured. Nails perfectly. Manicured, touch featherlight, and strategic. "Theo's future depends on you." When they left, the apartment felt occupied by an absence. I opened a window. Rain threaded through the city. Her scent lingered anyway, the way some memories do even after you clean every surface. I told myself I was grown, armored, safe. And then my phone lit up with a notification I didn't expect. 2 mornings later, my father called. "Honey, did you change my email password?" I didn't need the rest of the sentence to understand the shape of his worry. "No," I said carefully. "Why I was locked out, and the recovery address isn't mine anymore." I opened my laptop, hands already cold. Security alerts lined my inbox, an attempted login to my bank from Columbus, Ohio. The past had never learned to knock twice. Now it preferred to slip a hand through the window. That evening, I met Evelyn at our usual bar, where the lighting made everyone look a little kinder. I laid out the details one by one. She listened, head tilted, then said with her lawyer's muscles reawakening, "Lena, this isn't family drama. It's cybercrime. Get ahead of it." I filed a report the next morning. Detective Ryan Moore took my statement with a calm that steadied my lungs. "Do you believe your mother could have done this?" he asked. She already left once. For money, I said. Why stop now? The investigation moved faster than I expected. The IP traced to her address in Columbus. There were email forwards from my father's account, salary documents, fragments of my life scraped from places that were supposed to be mine. Ryan called with the confirmation and the question that snagged on a word. Do you want to press charges against your mother? The word mother lodged in my throat like glass. Silence had been expensive my whole life. Yes, I said finally. I thought the boundary would end the story. It didn't. A week later she arrived again, this time with a box of cookies and a smile arranged like an apology. You didn't have to call the police, she said sweetly, placing the box on my counter as if we were practicing for holidays. Theo drifted to the couch. Same phone. Same boredom dressed as arrogance. Please leave, I said. She sighed, pitying as if I were refusing kindness. Then her eyes flicked toward my desk, toward the open laptop, and a familiar calculation lit behind her mascara. That was when I understood she hadn't come to apologize. She'd come to finish what she started. It took seconds. I turned to pour water, and heard keys tapping. When I spun back, Theo was at my desk, my banking app glowing like a wound. What are you doing? He didn't bother to hide the screen. Relax, he said. Just checking. I crossed the room and shut the laptop hard enough to startle us both. You think this is a game? I asked, voice low. Martha stood, palms out in theatrical calm. He's curious, she said. Don't make a scene. Curious is Googling. How to budget, I said evenly. This is theft. Her face changed then. The softness evaporated. You owe me, she hissed, each word narrow. You wouldn't have this life if I hadn't brought you into this world. I took out my phone and pressed record. Say that again, I said steady. Theo laughed, but the edges of it were frayed. You're not calling the cops on your own mother, he said. I looked at him and saw the person I might have become if survival had taught me entitlement instead of resilience. I'm done being quiet, I said. For a breath, everything held still: the rain, the hum of the refrigerator, the tremor in my hands. Then Martha's mouth flattened into a line I recognized from a childhood I refused to live in anymore. You'll regret this, she said, grabbing Theo's arm. They left fast. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I stood in the wreckage of small things, spilled water, my pulse in my ears, the recording blinking red like proof. It wasn't triumph that filled the room. It was grief, clean and undeniable. The grief of finally refusing to beg love to be kind. The process moved with a rhythm I learned to trust. Ryan filed what needed filing. Evelyn sat beside me at hearings, passing tissues I didn't use. The recording, the IP trail, the forwarded emails together, they drew a line even a judge could see without squinting. Martha received a suspended sentence and a permanent restraining order. When the gavel fell, I didn't cry. I exhaled, and my ribs felt larger than they had in years. Life quieted in a kinder register. My father and I renamed the bookstore, the second chapter, and painted the door that same forgiving blue. We stacked new titles where the old water stain used to bloom, and laughed when the bell above the door chimed too eagerly. Feels different, he said, eyes crinkling. It is, I said, and meant it. In Seattle, I built something that wasn't just work. I launched the Second Chance Fund scholarships for kids from fractured homes who still wanted to try. Their messages arrived at odd hours, thank yous, updates, photos of dorm rooms with borrowed lamps. I read every word. Sometimes I cried. More often, I felt a calm I couldn't name, the sense that pain hadn't only taken, it had redirected. Ryan still stops by, pretending a form needs a signature. Evelyn teases us both. I don't know what any of it will become, but I know I'm allowed to find out. One night I stood at my window, watching rain draw silver threads through the air, and I whispered, I'm okay now, Dad. And for once, the words didn't feel like a spell I was trying to cast. They felt true. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't winning, it's becoming someone untouched by their cruelty. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who stays when the storm leans hard against the glass, and still doesn't leave. I finally stayed with myself,